Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Bluedragonfive. Well, folks, you're probably wondering, Dave, why are we talking about Dave? I'm going to tell you why. Dave, one of the most pleasant films Ivan Reitman ever made. And I've always had a soft spot for this film. And it's reached its 30th anniversary. We missed it by a few days because some of us get to go on vacations. But aside from that, I've been begging Tiki to see this movie. I kept referring it to him for so long, and he's always weaseled his way out of it. But we finally been able to get him to watch it, and I'm looking forward to getting his thoughts. I just honestly I just want an excuse.
Are you though? Are you though?
All right, really, I just want an excuse to talk about Dave. All right, I just want to talk about. I want to talk about this movie so I can say that we've done it. I just want to be able to talk about one of the most, because we've hyped up kind of the movies that are all about pleasantries and just kind of like putting some good out into the world, and
this is definitely a top tier pleasantry movie for sure.
So it's something definitely to talk about.
All right. Well, yes, Dragon, as you kind of set up, this has been kind of a long time coming. You've been hyping it up for me for. I mean, it's been at least a good solid couple years, right?
Yeah, minimum, yeah.
So I got to admit, I do really, really enjoy this movie for sure. I just, upon initial watch, I feel like what I was inevitably kind of fearing kind of came to pass, where it's like, I really like it, and it's super pleasant. I have almost no actual complaints or nitpicks about it at all. That being said, Dragon, I'm just not as passionate about it as you are. And that's kind of what I was afraid of, because it's almost kind of like that Office Space thing or something like that, where it's or Big Lebowski or one of those kind of movies. I use that as an example just because it's you hear, I also kind of experience this with those movies. So that's why I kind of cite those movies, where it's these big kind of cultural touchstones, where it's you hear so much about them, kind of almost become part of the pop culture landscape. Then you watch them and you're like, yeah, that was certainly a good movie. Don't really have a ton to say about it beyond that. Let me just break a couple things down on my initial reaction, though. Obviously, Dragon, come on, Kevin Kline, he's killing it. Really, I mean, he is so charming. This movie is very much a modern Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I'm sure we'll talk about that when you do background. And yeah, absolutely. Kevin Kline, definitely radiating that Jimmy Stewart energy for sure. Frank Langella plays a pretty good villain. Overall, the supporting cast is great. We get a little bit of Charles Grodin, not as much Charles Grodin as I would like, but a little bit of Charles Grodin. And, a taste of Grodin is always better than no Grodin. That's what I always say.
Grodin, not Grobin.
Oh my God. I don't know if I'll ever get that right. I'm sorry. I don't know, I guess if I did have nitpicks with this movie, they're not fair at all. They're really not. But I feel like there's a couple things about this movie that do feel a little dated. And I think I probably could turn a blind eye to them.
Oh, really? The 90s movie is dated. Please tell me more 30 years later.
So that whimsical, kind of overly whimsical score that all the 90s movies has? This has that in spades. And I feel like that's
against James Newton Howard.
Dragon, I'm just saying the score is very much kind of all right, audience, now you're supposed to feel sad. And now you're supposed to feel uplifted. I don't know. It's very much it's kind of like how everyone makes fun of at least nowadays when I was seeing people do the retrospectives on the original Super Mario Brothers movie, everyone was kind of making fun of that Alan Silvestri score for being kind of almost overly whimsical. I kind of get the same vibes from this score just a little bit. And I don't know, I think the pacing of this movie is a little bit, don't get me wrong. It's, it's a very pleasant film from top to bottom, to be sure. I don't know. I just kind of thought some of it went at a little bit of a tepid pace. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of the actual plot of, like, I think the actual way in which he gets into the White House, it's not bad at all. I don't want to like stop the podcast to have a whole debate over it. I think it's a little silly and convoluted. I don't know. But, overall, like I said, I really enjoyed this film. I just don't really have a passionate love for it like you do. So this is going to be I fear this is going to be a little bit of a lopsided conversation. I'll do my best to keep up with the passion that you have for it. All right.
Anyway.
So I assume you got some background.
Well, also, I had thoughts on the movie, too, beyond I like it,
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I love this movie so much. I mean, I saw it in school during history class. I think it's probably my first introduction to it.
You see, that's the problem, Dragon. When I was in history class, my teachers were like weird NorCal hippies, so I was just shown like Dr. Strangelove and Monty Python and the Holy Grail over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the big reason fundamentally I like Dave is as much as I do is the fact that, there's one of those early examples of when you kind of put the connection of like, man, this guy is so familiar. Oh my God, that's Tulio from, El Dorado.
Right.
The Road to El Dorado. And boy, he can act. So that's the thing. This movie, it's insanely pleasant.
It's the villain from Wild Wild West.
Well, no, he wasn't the villain in Wild Wild West.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You're right. He wasn't. You're right.
However,
fun
fact about Wild Wild West, similar to that, Kevin Kline in a dual role, one in which he plays president.
That's true. Oh, my God.
The other in which he plays charming individual, president. You can see where either John Peters or Barry Sonnenfeld was getting it from.
Oh, man.
Anyway, so that's the thing. This movie, it's an insanely pleasant and charming Ivan Reitman film. Which in the '90s there was like '90s and I guess late '80s, but I believe it was mostly '90s. You had that sweet spot with Ivan Reitman. He was making like the feel good comedies. He was making like that sweet spot in the '90s, like the Twins era of Ivan Reitman films. I love Twins, and also Kindergarten Cop as well, which is another great example. So that's the thing. So this is essentially, the best way I could sum up Dave is it's the political version of Prince and the Pauper. Only in the morals. The morals have been tweaked here. The prince does not really learn a lesson; he's just in a coma. But essentially,
the prince really doesn't have much of a role outside of a very
the prince.
appearance.
But again, more so, it's about like we're teaching the world a lesson than we are teaching, like the prince a lesson. He's a scumbag. He's in a
that kind of reminds me of just how randomly sad and dark the death of the king is in the Mickey Mouse Prince and the Pauper.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
So yeah, I go back to Dave. It's like ultimately, it's the dream of the perfect movie president, who is not political at all and is just like a good man trying to help people. He just
wants to give people jobs, and I got to say, Dragon, my situation right now. I appreciate that. Message.
It's got an A-list cast, yet it's an intimate story. I mean, that's the thing I respect most about Dave. Is the fact it's an intimate story, despite the grandiose circumstance of like president, but just a guy just kind of going about, just trying to make things better. All right. So background. So Gary Ross wrote this. I believe it starts with Gary Ross, who was the writer on Big, and he both wrote and directed Pleasantville, which you really like. And also Hunger Games. He was the writer on Hunger Games.
Yeah, the Hunger Games was like one of the last big things he did, I think.
Yeah, the original Hunger Games. So, yeah. So he was friends with Lauren Schuler Donner, who was Richard Donner's wife, who was an excellent producer in her own right. So they were friends. They came up in acting class together in the 70s. So 88 rolls around. Gary Ross essentially pitches her Dave. Now, the interesting thing about Dave is that Dave was kicked around for a while because every time they wanted to make the movie, depending on who was in office, the studios would shut it down. They kept, like, Disney, for example. Disney refused to do it because you had, like, conservatives in the White House. You had Reagan, you had Bush Sr. in there. They wouldn't let him do it, and that's why I went to Warner Brothers.
Then meanwhile, you get Clinton in there, and it's like, hey, he seems like a nice guy.
We're going to get there. There's a story.
Okay.
But yes, you're right. Because we have Clinton in there, we're allowed to tell this.
Bill Clinton
Anyway.
plays the sax.
So originally, Richard Donner was supposed to direct this. That ended up kind of falling through. So they got Ivan Reitman, who again he's kind of soaring high on Twins, and well, I believe it was actually Twins. I'm blanking on the year Twins came out. I think Twins came out maybe a year after this, but I think Kindergarten Cop had happened at this point. Ivan Reitman,
That kind of explains the Arnold cameo, then, I guess.
Well, that's definitely why he had. I want to say Twins was also made.
Also, it's funny that Arnold is in a political position in this movie.
Yeah, I believe that's just more like kind of a Nostradamus sort of thing.
Right. Kind of like one of those Simpsons kind of things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so Twins came out way before us. Twins was in 88, so that's
okay.
Then, I think he had Twins, then Kindergarten Cop, and then this, I think. Anyway, point being, Schwarzenegger, of course, a lot of goodwill with Ivan Reitman, that says. So, speaking of that, so originally, there was a lot of talk about who was going to play the titular role. Initially, believe it or not, the first choice was Schwarzenegger because of all the stuff he'd done with Reitman. So Schwarzenegger was originally they went to him first. And then there's a whole bunch of names thrown around, like they try and get star power. Michael Keaton. And,
I was gonna. Keaton would have been my first guess. He literally would have been my first guess.
No, for sure, Keaton. I mean, I assume. Okay, look, because of Ivan Reitman having worked with Schwarzenegger, I'm assuming he was the first guy. I mean, Keaton was thrown around there. There's a whole bunch of names were thrown around, Kevin Costner and everything. But the Warren Beatty was also suggested. And here's the thing, Warren Beatty. He's the one who suggested, hey, get Kevin Kline for this. He'd be perfect for this. He just won the Oscar for A Fish Called Wanda. You should get him for this movie. And they did. They got him for this movie. And making the movie, they strive for a lot of authenticity. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of shades of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Oh, so yeah, big time.
Get the tone right there, and they kind of make the movie as authentic production-wise as they could. So the big thing, that kind of went into doing that was the White House, circa the time it was made. It was, it was like the most authentic, complete recreation of the White House at that point in time. As in, they didn't just build the Oval Office. They built the Oval Office in pretty much like all the halls that you're seeing of the White House, at least for the most. But I can't say when Bob's walking through the hallway if that's still a set that they fully built for this. But they were not allowed to shoot in the White House, so they had to recreate all that pretty flawlessly. And they bought the same carpet that's in the Oval Office from the same company. They recreated all the paintings that were in the White House in '93.
Kind of like how Channel Awesome wanted the people who designed the White House website to redesign their website.
Well, way to bring it down, but sure.
I just always oh God.
Yeah. Anyways, a few other things, of course, because of the authenticity. That's why we have all the political cameos in this movie, because they have every person we go to in the news correspondents. Those are real politicos. Those aren't actors. Those are real actual political guys from the '90s. And let's see. Also, so the inciting incident of the movie is kind of inspired by two actual political figures. Woodrow Wilson, the president, way back when, he had a stroke while in office.
Okay,
so that's where they got the inciting incident there for. For that from. And then Nelson Rockefeller, the vice president at the time, he way back when he essentially died with his boots on in the saddle with a young woman. So that's where they so it's kind of a fusion of those two ideas. The idea that Woodrow Wilson had a stroke in office and they tried to hide it. So that's where they get the idea of essentially the inciting incident from, and then just kind of the exact circumstances of from there. Anyway, so the movie comes out. People love this movie. Got a lot of great reviews and everything.
Got a 95 on Rotten Tomatoes, which is really impressive.
Honestly, if I'm right, I'm pretty sure I am. I can't remember Ghostbusters rating, but even then, I think that was when it came out, it was probably in the 80% range. Best reviewed Ivan Reitman film. Anyway, but so people love this. It's one of those. It's so weird, Tiki. It's one of those movies where it was so acclaimed, and yet it just kind of. No one really talks about it, but everyone remembers it when they see it.
Sure, I can see that. Yeah.
So here's the thing. So
Kate and Leopold Dragon.
Yep, Kate.
Any opportunity to bring up fucking
Just
David
wait till
people.
June, kids. Anyway, so people loved it, especially Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton loved it so much he signed a copy of the script and had it framed, and he sent it to the writer. He sent it to Gary Ross.
You know what? I really like this president at the beginning of the movie.
God, you know what's funny though? You know what show Bill Clinton loves?
What, Animaniacs?
Well, I would hope so.
I know, I would hope so too.
Grey's Anatomy.
Oh my god. I can't, that show is still going on, man. That show is just like stupidly long running.
You know how I know that?
Because I assume one of your family members watches it?
No. How do?
Oh, I'm sorry. How do you know?
How do I know that Bill Clinton likes?
I'm sorry. How do you know that? I'm sorry.
Bill Clinton knows that. Yes. Seth MacFarlane got to meet Bill Clinton when they had him on for the Family Guy episode, or at the very least when they really consulted him for the. He basically at some point he had met Bill Clinton. And that kind of inspired the Bill Clinton episode of Family Guy. Anyway, when he met him, he said, "Oh, I love that Grey's Anatomy." That's how I know. Okay.
God. You know, I really hope Meredith gets with that Dr. McDreamy. All right. Oh, I know way too much about Grey's Anatomy just by knowing that. Anyways. Okay, we got Richard's victims in the comments being as sassy as ever. He says, what a great Dave to stream. Puns.
Yeah.
A Fish Called Wanda is in Fairly Odd Parents. I've never actually seen A Fish Called Wanda. I really want to see it. I think I would enjoy it.
I can't remember if I liked A Fish Called Wanda. I watched it once and I thought it was okay, but obviously what we do with the fish has always been a little like, oh man, that's really messed up. We do that fish.
I feel like it'd be up my alley though. I like dark comedies.
Yeah.
And then he says, Woodrow Wilson, the president. Oh, I thought you were talking about Woodrow Wilson, the YouTube star.
Well, I don't know. The kid, I don't know. I don't know how far back the kids are thinking of Woodrow Wilson, man. Come on. Right. Unless they're singing an Animaniacs song to remember who the presidents are. I mean, come on.
Okay, is that about all the background?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about it.
Let's get into it. All righty. Okay, so yeah, like you were saying, Dragon, I do really, really love the fact that Dave is a staffing agent. He runs a staffing agency to
start off with. Yeah.
I think that's a really... Dragon, I actually think, like, when I was watching this movie, what was kind of going through my head is, like, and I don't say this lightly because I don't, like, with the current state of Disney live action remakes, that is an entirely different thing. I truly think we could benefit, just as a culture, from a remake of this movie. I don't know. I think it's about time we've had another story like this.
I mean, we always could do something kind of inspired by Dave. We don't necessarily have to make it like, hey, let's do Dave again, but,
I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, would this really be the worst thing to remake?
No, I mean, it wouldn't, but I'm just saying, like, with the charm of Dave is that Dave is kind of like, obviously, one of the weirdest things about Dave is just literally the name of the movie. It's just the fact that it's just kind of Dave.
right.
And
that's true.
I guess what I'm getting at is because of that, Dave is something that you don't necessarily have to slavishly readapt. You could just kind of like take.
Well, it's kind of like how this movie, it's not necessarily a remake of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, but it's kind of a spiritual successor.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Only it's kind of more of a Prince and a Pauper kind of situation. But you're right, though; it has all the undertones of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
So the only reason I bring up the remake thing is just because I really feel like the themes of this movie strongly resonate today. They really do.
Exactly. So I guess so. That's the thing. So we have David, the temp agency. What we do here, we set up the dual role. We establish both men right at the start. One's kind of like the stiff dour, kind of president. On the flip side, he's, as we learn later in the movie, he's let power corrupt his moral center, and he's in a loveless marriage and all that sort of stuff. On the flip side, I love the introduction of Dave before we even get to the temp agency because he's doing his impression of the president. So the idea this guy's doing is a parody of the president from the start, but as a happy-go-lucky guy, which is literally what's going to happen to him in the movie.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but basically he's using the impression as kind of like a means to promote his business, right?
Well, no, I think he's just doing it on the side, like kind of like a non-taxable sort of thing.
Okay, got it.
It's purely it's like so we set up that he's impersonated the president before, but usually for like small local business sort of thing. Honestly, Tiki, I don't think you're far off though. I think you have to read into it a little bit, but I think the idea is like people do favors for him for his temp agency, like he does, like his friend Murray Blum. Like he kind of hooks him up with like a lot of people from the temp agency to help out his business. So presumably, maybe it's like a you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back sort of thing.
Okay,
so
got it.
Because he did say later on, he said it's a barter system. So the barter system implies perhaps it is. It's kind of helping each other out, which again is what Dave's all about here, helping people find jobs. Which again, the idea this we lay out what he's going to do in the faux presidency, where again, okay, he looks like the president, he's a happy guy, and he's helping people. Those are the three core principles of this guy, and we set it up all in the opening. We know everything this guy.
It is a very economic kind of character introduction for sure.
I mean, overall, the movie's economic in its runtime as well. I think we kind of hit all of our,
one thing about the movie, like, we'll obviously kind of circle back to this, but I was like, Dragon, as soon as we set up the first lady thing, I was dreading the lie revealed, and the movie subverts it. And I was like, damn 90s movie, way to subvert a 90s movie trope.
Again, you have the guy who wrote Big doing this, Tiki. I mean, come on. All right, so Bill Mitchell. Overall, this guy. It's so funny that we have Kevin Kline pulling double duty here, where again, and it's so odd that he doesn't.
I just wanted to see a little bit more of the president. I don't know. That's if there were one nitpick, I feel like we could have had one or two more scenes. I don't exactly know how you would do it given the plot.
I mean, that's the thing, though, T. I think we know everything we need to know about this guy. We learn all the plot relevant stuff after he's not around, and all we know is like, okay, this guy is not a touchy-feely president. You know, he's cheating on his wife.
He's not going to be going around kissing babies anytime soon.
Nope. So that's the thing. So he's. I think we know everything we need to know about this guy feeling wise, and then we reveal the big plot important reason, which we put on Dave's shoulders more than we do the president's shoulders. So I think we're keeping the focus.
That's fair. That's fair
right now. So
I mean, really, the president's more of a plot device than an actual fully fleshed out character. Exactly. That's all I'm saying.
All I need to know is this guy seems like, okay, this is like the average president that we do have, which is like, okay, it's just kind of.
But I mean, like I was saying about how this would really play well in a modern context, man. I mean, it's like I am one of those people where it's like, not to get into my own personal politics, because frankly, I don't have very many personal politics. But I just think everything is so like dramatic one way or another. It's. You know, there's just corruption on both sides, and it's hard to trust political figures at all. And so it's like, this is exactly like, it's kind of like the person that we need to be running a country. You know what I mean? It's very much like the everyman.
Well, again, Tiki, fictional president wise, every time I cite like my favorites or my wish fulfillments for what a president would be like, it's Dave. And it's Tom Kirkman from the show Designated Survivor. Like, there's the TV president, there's the movie president. That's what it is. You know what the key to both? You know why
put those on an election? Put those two on an election ticket together.
And here's why. Here's why they're perfect presidents. Okay, they're not political animals at all. These are guys who lucked into the job.
Unfortunately, yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. I don't know. Again, not to get too political, but. I don't know. I just think the deeper that you are into the political system on either direction, it's just kind of, you know, you kind of lose sight of yourself after a while. Anyways.
Right. Okay. Anyways, the point being, the president hires a double. So basically he can cut out of this function early and he can cheat on his wife. And we have the awesome split screen shot of the 90s where Kevin Kline meets Kevin Kline.
Very much like a predecessor to the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap of it all, where where they'd be doing that basically the whole movie.
Mm-hmm. So, and again, we have the like the charm here of just this, you know, where the charm of him, like, you know, having a nice time playing president for a moment. They're like, God bless you all, and then he's doing the gig full time. You know, it's kind of the sell there. Like, as Bill Mitchell is kind of taken out of the equation here, we kind of fill the void in a really fun way.
Mm-hmm. All right, we should probably set up the Langella of it all, because he's the other like really big figure of this movie.
So let's talk about Bob and Alan. So Bob Alexander is, of course, the wonderful, talented Frank Langella, who we love. and he's playing a
I'm not going to
cutthroat.
say he steals the movie because Kevin Kline is damn good in it, but he comes close, man. He comes close.
There's a moment of acting with Kevin Kline. There's a lot of great moments of acting with Kevin Kline in this movie, obviously. But there's one specific scene that he has with Langella I want to highlight. I just love. We'll build to it. It's really good.
Okay.
Regardless, so Frank Langella, we love him for so many things. I mean, I think most recent we love him in Kidding. He's so good in that show.
I think Kidding is definitely probably going to be his career magnum opus.
I mean, that and Frost Nixon in terms
Frost
of the big
Nixon,
screen,
for sure.
but,
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, that's so that's the thing. So you have this cutthroat chief of staff, and we have, like, to balance him out, we have Kevin Dunn playing Alan, who's the speechwriter, and I love that, like, they both have, like, different kind of, they're opposing forces of Dave. One is the complete opposite of Dave and Bob Alexander. This guy is like, there's no.
It's almost kind of like Shoulder Angel and Shoulder Devil in a way, if you think about it.
Well, absolutely, but they're all like, Alan's about finesse because he's a speechwriter. His whole job is about reaching the American people in a non-combative way. Where Bob is like, he's the chief of staff. He's all about, like, no, hardly. Like, he'll kick puppies if they're in the White House. It's like, he'll, like,
Right.
No, do it this, do it that way, do it. No, the president doesn't want this. So that's the thing. That's kind of how they bounce each other out there, and the fact that I like the relationship here of Alan has an arc in the movie where Kevin Dunn plays this wonderfully, where he is really charmed by Dave like the rest of us are, and he's like, he remembers my speeches. It's just kind of like, there's an arc there because this guy does such a great impression of this guy.
I almost kind of read that moment as like someone recognizing a ghostwriter's writing or something that.
Exactly. That's where it is. Yeah. And of course, Bob here, plot-wise, he's pulling. This is so funny. He's actually, again, there's a lot of great political writing here that's going on. Gary Ross is doing here because Bob's.
I say, I do think the writing, Dragon. I think the writing of this movie, when it's at its most satirical, is a little bit Succession-esque. Like, obviously not as cutthroat and dramatic as Succession, but I think it's got a little bit of that edge in some spots.
Yeah, like, we're not scrutinizing a product launch like we are in Succession, but
But I'm just saying it does a good job of kind of like the people kind of wheeling and dealing with each other like Succession does.
I think one of my favorite gags is one. I love how angry Frank Langella gets in this movie. But when he does, I love that, like, he's in this little intense hallway conversation with Alan, and then, like, someone walks by, "Hello, Bob." "Oh, hello. Hey, I was going." They snaps right back into it. But yeah, so Bob, he pulls a Nixon in this movie. Everything he does as the vice president, that's essentially what Nixon tried doing to Agnew. So yeah, that's essentially the idea of, like, okay, everyone's looking at me, I'm going to direct them somewhere else, only really shady. In this case, like, directly. Vice president, wrongdoing. Look at him. But yeah, so it's kind of the dynamic of power and finesse. Power, finesse.
Just going to read off a couple of Richard Victim's comments. Oh God. He said, I tried watching Greg's Anatomy, but there is no genius jerk doctor making edgy statements about being addicted to Vicodin, so it wasn't for me.
Now he's in space.
But you have Sandra Oh having social anxiety. That's not a sell.
God bless Sandra Oh, seriously.
Sandra Oh is seriously, like, the only reason to watch Grey's Anatomy whatsoever. All right, Disney should make an animated remake of this movie. God.
Again, not a Disney movie, so
it doesn't matter. All right. Oh God. Okay, so Dragon.
Yeah.
This right here. You want to tell the folks why you really don't like this particular Eddie Murphy movie?
Well, folks, I've seen this movie, by the way. So it annoys me to no end because every time I tell someone about Dave, 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, they're going to say, "Oh wait, the Eddie," like my associate here. "Oh wait, the Eddie Murphy movie." Like, no, that's Meet Dave. This is Dave. It's no.
Oh God! It's kind of like Steel Magnolias versus Magnolia. That's kind of like the frustration I was having when I found Magnolia.
It's like, no, it's not little people.
Not Steel Magnolias, just Magnolia.
It's like, yes, I know they're trying to go for a charming Dave in that movie. That is not the same. Not at all. Anyway.
All right.
Kevin Kline hasn't eaten, uh, uh, Kevin Hart. He's not. He's not in the taste buds. No,
What?
you never even saw Meet Dave, did you?
No, I haven't.
Well, there
Is
you go.
that literally the premise of Meet Dave?
Okay, Meet Dave. Okay, I'm going to very quickly recap
Oh
Meet
God.
Dave from Tiki here. Which, by the way, one of the reasons it took so long to get to this was this guy kept thinking every time I brought up Dave, no, I don't want to talk about the Eddie Murphy. Like, no, it's not the
That's
Eddie
what.
Murphy.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, no. So that Meet Dave essentially is a bunch of people, a bunch of tiny people venturing venturing to Earth in a spaceship, and the spaceship is Eddie Murphy. So Eddie Murphy is essentially a mech.
Okay, I'd say no more. Eddie Murphy and a weird sci-fi concept. Jesus Christ, we don't need that
And
again.
essentially, all the cast are like comedians and actors who are the lead of which looks like the captain of the ship is what the body looks like. So Eddie Murphy is the little Eddie Murphy inside the regular sized Eddie Murphy.
Oh, that sounds
And Kevin Hart is in it too. I think it's an early Kevin Hart role too. That's the thing.
All right. Anyways,
Like he's in the mouth of they're all assigned to different parts like arms and legs, and he's in the mouth. And anyway, so back to the actual Dave. So let's talk about one of the real highlights of this movie, the Happy President montage. Let's talk about that Happy President montage.
Well, I mean, Dragon, again, this is kind of one of those things where it's like, it was certainly pleasant, but I don't really have a ton to say about it.
It's nice to see him like going to the factory with the giant robot arms and like him taking pictures of the babies and playing with the dogs. And the best part, little health food lesson with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right. I was really kind of like thrown off a little bit at first with the Arnold thing. I was like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting to see him. But I mean, I guess it's right in the heart of the 90s. It's not like he's out of place in this era.
That's true. Again, Ivan Reitman, so it tracks.
Right. It's just usually when Arnold pops up in a movie, it's like he's more of a centerpiece of the movie. That's the thing that kind of threw me off. Rarely do you see Arnold cameo.
But yeah, it's fair. I guess, yeah, he doesn't really cameo.
I'm not saying it never happens. I'm just saying usually when he pops up, he's there.
Right. So, and also he's like throwing the first, game pitch and everything, and all that's really good. And that's where the music's playing. It's going really.
The first game, that pitch scene. I love how his jacket just says "Prez."
Yeah. Anyway, so I gotta admit, when I look back on this movie, I still love it. This is not a criticism of it, but a thought does occur to me when I watch this movie. Then it's like, in retrospect, Dave was really lucky that major catastrophe did not happen at this time. We were in kind of like that safe pocket of the 90s. We weren't really quite, obviously we're not in 2001. We're not like, we're not.
I mean, this is like what, right? I think probably the biggest thing that would be happening around this time is probably like the LA riots.
I mean, well, this
not
is
sure exactly the timeline on that.
Well, the riots were 92, I believe. So it's a year after the riots.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, we're kind of after that. I forget when Clinton did that controversial bombing that went wrong. I don't think that happened yet. So that's the thing. We're kind of
like in a sweet spot.
That's the thing. We're kind of
controversy politically.
We're in that bubble. We're in that bubble. Where basically, any trouble that we found, we went looking for. That's the thing. Any trouble's like okay, and we're just making sure we're.
And then 9/11 hit, and that sweet spot is just never going to happen ever again for the rest of our lives.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So like that rare kind of like ceasefire. So that's the thing. So that's a dated thing in terms of like we got really lucky that this was kind of like in that early 90s period.
Yeah, sure.
So that's like,
especially like if you think about it, like 80s was Cold War, 70s was Vietnam. It really was kind of the perfect time for it to come out.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about one of the standouts in the movie. Let's talk Ving Rhames. Let's talk about Dwayne.
One of his early roles, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's like this in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction comes out a year after this, I believe. So that's because Pulp Fiction was not.
I mean, first of all, not used to seeing this man with hair, Dragon.
That's true. But you know what's funny though? I know obviously there's Pulp Fiction's the main influence, especially visually. But you know what? You look at this movie, you look at Ving Rhames in this movie, you have to assume
A little bit of Cobra Bubbles.
You have to assume the inkling of Cobra Bubbles
A
or
little
Ving
bit,
Rhames.
yeah.
At the very least, when they're thinking we need
like an intimidating Secret Service agent who secretly has a heart of gold. Yeah, checks out.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you got to imagine like they're thinking like, okay, we want a cool looking tough guy, so we're thinking, hey, like Marcellus Wallace.
Right.
But you know what? Like, can he do it though? Can he play the softness? Dave. Okay. Dwayne and Dave, the two Ds, man.
Oh God.
Dave and Dwayne.
All right.
Okay, so here he's wonderful. He's intimidating. He's got the booming voice. He's stern. He's quiet. He's the straight man to our kind of our funny president guy. But he is. But that's the thing. I love there's an arc there, and you have this understated, like it's understood, and you can see it that he's growing to like Dave genuinely. You get to see it. He's fond of him, or at the very least, he's growing fond of him. And I love like we have like all these little
proud of his Dave.
That's a bit of a stretch.
I know. That's why I didn't sing it heartily, Dragon.
Anyway, but we have like these nice little. I love the mundanity of these little intimate moments of genuine bonding. That's what I really highlight the movie for. Like we have these honest moments of humanity all throughout the film, where like Dave's trying to get a little something out of him about the first lady, so he's making him the awesome sandwich. And then we're like he's showing him like the binder full of like the little photo album. It says like there's me and there's you. Like really? It's just like maybe you should wear like a sweater or something. Like they make me look thick around the neck. Like what if you had like a like a sweater vest? Like think I could pull that off? It's adorable. And he's supporting Dave as he goes on versus like him kind of calling the shots at first. It's great.
Sure.
So one of the big standout scenes is the homeless shelter. How'd you feel about the homeless shelter?
I mean, it's a good scene for sure. I will admit there's a little bit of like, again, kind of like with the 90s. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. It's just like it very much feels like a 90s feel-good scene. It's weird that I keep making this comparison, Dragon. This is the second time in a few days I've made this comparison. Feels like the type of thing Robin Williams would excel at, like again, with the interacting with children thing.
I mean, yeah, sure, yeah. It's. I mean, look, I think the word you're looking for is schmaltz. You think it
is schmaltzy. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little schmaltzy.
I mean, I think it's like a scoop of schmaltz, all right. But even so, even if it is like look with the music, yes, playing it in this scene, yeah, there's an ounce of schmaltz there. But you know what? I think the important thing is that he is actually really charming with the kid. So that's undercutting the schmaltz. Like there's an actual these are kids that have communication problems, or at least that's what the fear is right now. The fear is like being homeless might take away certain faculties for them, and the fact that Dave is communicating with this kid who's kind of alone and isolating himself, and whose name is David. I don't know.
I do think that's a nice touch. The kid. I mean, very easy, low hanging fruit kind of sentimentality there, but it's a nice touch.
Yeah, there's like a little magic trick for him, and it's Dave's humanity on display for the homeless children. And these are the moments that really singing for me with Kevin Kline, where like he's in the car and then Ellen, the first lady hates her husband because she knows all about the philandering and everything. She thinks poor Dave is her husband. So her saying like, "When do you care about a homeless shelter?" I care about the homeless. It's like just the ounce right there. It's like that guy absolutely, he cares about the homeless, absolutely.
Totally.
And just him being shocked, like it's all kids. Like what's happening here? And just I love it. Okay, so Bob here, very skeezy. Bob closes the homeless shelter for money, and then he get to the big.
Dragon, why does Bob close the homeless shelter?
Because he doesn't care about the homeless.
No. Try again.
Because we've got to have money.
There we go.
All right. I'm sorry. Anyway, so the point is he vetoed the bill for like this for this public works project, and Dave here we put on full display. He's a nice guy. We've set up that he cares about the struggling average Joe. He cares about people and he fights for people, as we saw him even to his buddy and everything. Come on, and hire one more person. Like just fit her in the office for the time being. It's temporary. Like he's going to bat for people all the time. But this is the moment acting that just kind of like dazzles me. Kevin Kline is playing it so hurt in this scene where he called this meeting in the middle of the night, which is kind of a bold thing for him to do because, again, he's kind of employed by them. But again, that's the point. This is a serious matter. Dave calls him in, and Bob is just not paying him any mind, and he's standing up to Bob here. He's just going up to him. But we went there. We saw these
Yeah,
things.
no, okay. That's probably the most emotionally affected moment in the movie for me personally.
God,
I
I
really
love
did
what he
feel that.
does. I love the way he says, "But we went
Uh-huh.
there." I just, oh God, like he's so good.
I mean, that to me just kind of like sums up like all the bullshit of
Yeah,
politics. You know what I mean?
exactly. Like you knew you were going to do this, and you sent us there anyway. Like, how could you do that?
Sure, sure.
So then, of course, he gives him like the pithy challenge of like, if you can cut 650 million from the budget, you can have your precious homeless shelter. Which then leads to my favorite part of the movie.
This is delightful, and of course we do get the Grodes dragon.
Yep. Now we talked about this when unfortunately Charles Grodin passed, but now we're finally here. And so Charles Grodin, he's Murray Blum, kind of Dave's best buddy here, and he brings him to the White House. And Charles Grodin here is just playing it. This is going to be a
I
very
wish he had more than just like this one bit. Like I know he's got a little bit at the
yeah.
beginning and the end, but this is like his one big scene.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, like you can't say he's not plot relevant.
This is gonna be a weird comparison. I've always weirdly felt this way when I see Charles Grodin in this movie, in this scene particularly. Charles Grodin kind of has this vibe because again they're friends and they're kind of like because Dave's kind of a big kid at the end of the day. Like he gets him in there, says, "Come on, sit in the chair." Like you want to go to Camp David, that sort of stuff. Because of this kid-like dynamic between
Yeah.
them, and if you look at them as kids, Charles Grodin reminds me so much of Spanky from The Little Rascals.
Oh my god, that is a weird comparison.
Does he give you? If you look at Spanky, particularly from that '90s Little Rascals
I hear you.
movie,
I hear you.
if you look,
Oh, that '90s little Rascals movie, man. That movie's a fever dream.
that's what I'm saying. If you look at Spanky in that movie, and you look at Charles Grodin with that prism in mind, it's like, huh? You know, there is kind of that boyish charm going on with Charles Grodin. Anyway, so I love that he lures him in with the bratwurst lunch.
The bratwurst, yes.
How about some bratwurst and some spicy mustard? Like
That'll do it.
Bratwurst. I know you do. But yeah, so basically, Murray is an accountant, and basically he helps him
Murray
helps him do the national budget.
yeah. Sorry, I couldn't resist the Murray thing.
I know. Yeah. So I just love that we have this charming idea, which I think is the highlight of the film, where we cut the budget at this cabinet meeting. And
I love the tension of the meeting because it's like, this is probably like, I agree with you, Dragon. This whole section, I think, is probably the strongest section in the movie. I love the tension of like, oh man, how's Langella going to react to this? He's stepping over his bounds. He's doing a great thing, but he's definitely going over the job description.
Yeah. I love that he's like just that silence in the room. Yes, Bob. He's like challenging him, but not yelling at him. Just like the whole he knows that Bob can't interfere during this. That Bob is helpless to stop him, and he's not loving it, but he's just like making it very firm. Like, hey, buddy, I'm correcting your mistake here. So no,
totally, yeah.
But yeah, so this always been my favorite scene in the movie, and I love how Grodin kind of facilitates it here, and just the idea he kind of basically. This is honestly why I was probably shown in history class. Just the idea that this is like the inspiring scene in the movie.
This is a really damn good breakdown of budget, man. It really is.
Where it's like one could argue, like we're dumbing down the national budget, but here's the thing, though: we do need, he's making excellent points here. He's making good points.
I mean, at least it's not Margot Robbie in a bathtub.
Sure. Well, then again, who can complain about that?
Well, I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying that's how you dumb it down.
Yeah, I guess my point here is I like that every point that he's making, it has validity, but you could always make like the really cynical argument of like, well, he doesn't understand. Well, it's like the idiot savant thing or whatever. It's like, like we're letting the guy do whatever he wants because he's the title character in the movie. Or no. He's calling it out in the scene that, look, I'm sure, like, he's not diminishing these guys.
This very much has to do with his established profession from the start of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So he's had this great bit where he's laying out, like, do we really need to reassure the American public that they can have confidence in their cars when it's going to put kids out in the street? And in this whole thing of like, if our contractors are defunct or delinquent in their work, I mean, can't we hold off on paying them till the work is done? And in the meantime, invest those funds. And he's making good points. But I love this. This is the line that saves it for me in case any critics would come after this scene, which they haven't, but just if they did. It's like, you could say, isn't it kind of reckless to make broad generalizations like that? Or isn't it like, he's not insulting anyone. He says, look, I'm sure that's important, but I don't want to tell an 8-year-old kid this. Like the way he phrases it, it's like, he's absolutely right that, he is dumbing it down, but he's not wrong. And it is working towards a positive goal here. None of the men in this room can like say, unless they're Bob, but they're really waiting to get fired. Like, we hate the homeless children. And they did it. It's
my political position is 100% anti-homeless.
Yeah. I don't like the homeless. They smell.
Oh God.
Okay, so anyways, after this big moment, it's a great little victory for him. Ellen discovers the truth. By the way, Ellen played by
let me ask you something, Dragon. I do really like her. I feel like her storyline kind of starts, like I said, I think the biggest strength of her story is the fact that they so easily could have done a liar reveal thing, and they really don't at all. As a matter of fact, when she realizes that he's lying, that's when the relationship actually starts. That's a really nice subversion, Dragon. I just kind of think like she kind of pops into the story about halfway through the runtime. Do you wish we would have set up her personality a little bit more before that?
I agree with you to a point that the downside to the way we tell in the story is that she's going to be angry wife for Act 1.
That's kind of what I was talking about when it came to like my few issues with pacing in the movie, honestly.
I mean, it makes sense though.
It almost kind of feels like there's two halves to this movie. There's like the half of the movie that kind of, the climax is the homeless shelter scene we just talked about. And then it kind of goes into more of like a romantic comedy half.
Yeah, well, I mean, the movie is kind of like marketed as a romantic comedy. Because of that, I honestly think, you know what I think it is? I think it's that we have her in an understandable position of being the angry wife at the beginning. And the main reason we do that is we have an unexpected kind of turn there where it's like, okay, Bob and Alan are not concerned about the wife because she hates the husband, and she won't interfere here. But of course, she's the only person who can possibly catch on that it's not him. If anyone's going to know, it's going to be her. So we have, I don't know. It feels like she's like our opportunity for change in the story to a degree. That's actually probably a bad comparison. The fact is she's the obstacle of like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? She knows. I mean, can she go on? She's going to have to make a moral choice here. Is she going to like rat out like, oh, what has happened to my husband? People should know about this, or that? I'm impressed.
No, I mean, I like I said, I really like that we don't even like tap dance around that being a plot point.
I mean, the most impressive thing about Ellen, also by us to highlight, Sigourney Weaver does a really good job. I like
coming right off of Aliens, and it's really cool that she's kind of like embracing a more feminine role after that.
Actually, if I recall, I could be wrong here. I forget if they were shooting Aliens 3 or not. That's why I think that's why she has short hair.
Okay, that makes sense. I
forget when Aliens 3 came out, but I believe that's the reason why she had short hair.
Poor anyway. David Fincher.
Yeah.
That's all I think about when I think of Alien 3.
Okay, the point is, it's so impressive when you think about it here that, one, we have that very effective scene where we go to the secret room where Bill Mitchell's body's being kept with the red lighting and everything. Again, it's like in this comedy, it's like, oh man, it's kind of an intense scene where she finds her husband in this comatose state. And we have this... the impressive thing is that in a short amount of time, we do two things in a short amount of time in this movie, given the economic pacing. I'm amazed that we do what we do in these moments. One, with Ellen, the fact that you buy that we've been building kind of a relationship where she's kind of become impressed with her husband. She's taking this rather well because, again, the marriage was kind of dead already. And in a way, she's falling in love with her husband all over again, which is a twisted idea. But again, the guy who wrote Big and sold you on the relationship.
I mean, I don't necessarily, it's not like she's, like I said, Dragon, it's not like they do a thing where she's falling in love with her husband and then she gets too deep into it and it's like, you lied to me. You're not who you say you
are.
Right.
We're not doing, no, I agree with you. We're not, that's what's impressive. We're not doing that. So it's the fact that we have again, like the guy who wrote Big, who had this kind of investing relationship between the older woman and the 13-year-old boy, but he was in Tom Hanks's body though.
To be fair, I think this plays a lot better than that does. I still
It
like Big
does.
a lot, but
Well, you see my point though. The fact
yeah,
that again,
yeah,
it's kind of a very unique circumstance for a relationship.
sure, sure.
Anyway, yeah. So we have like here's one of the other big scenes that really bonds them together is the like they get stopped by the cops, where they kind of go out of the White House, sneak out of the White House, and they get stopped by a cop, and then they have to sing Tomorrow.
I like that they establish him as a Broadway guy.
Well, yeah, he's been singing throughout the movie, and he likes it.
Oklahoma at the start.
What I love is that we kind of had this running gag that we pay off here tremendously, where he says, "I had this routine I've been working on. It's the president and the first lady go to Club Med." So we kind of pay that off. Now, here's what's fascinating: this scene was not in the script originally. This whole scene, the whole like singing, getting pulled over and singing, the song "Come Out Tomorrow." They wanted to put that in there so they'd be bonded together, but they had to get permission from the guy who wrote Annie, or at least wrote the song for Annie. And the guy was like, he's like, okay, look, you can use it, but no parody. I do not want this song parodied, which of course we'll see how that went through the test of time. But for this movie, like, no, I don't want this song parodied. You just got to sing it straight. And secondly, you owe me one, kid. He said that to Ivan Reitman. You owe me one, kid, and he never collected on that favor. It's adorable. I kind of want that story to be true. I have no idea if it is, but that's what's been reported about it. So yay.
Sure, sure.
Anyway, so it's an adorable little scene here. Sigourney Weaver just singing, it's just not having no real proclivity for it, and the cop calling him out, and like, you got to save all the money you can, buddy. Just you're gonna need. You're good. I love that he compliments him. Look, son, you're really good. She needs a lot of work.
Right. It's like at the end of that exchange, that's all the cop is interested in, is just giving the constructive feedback.
But again, it's a really, I don't mean to kind of talk about all the singing here, but it's a really good scene. Just the idea they are absolutely caught right now. Like, oh God, the president and the first lady have come out of the White House, and they're being pulled.
It's like in the wrong circumstances, it would totally just look like this random guy who is impersonating the president is now kidnapping the first lady.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They lucked their way out of this scene, and it's wonderful. But yeah, then he's like, they're having this nice little kind of date where he's making her the sandwich like he made Dwayne, and they're he's talking about basically the genesis of the job initiative comes about here. Like, I like playing this role because I could really help people I've never met before, and it made them feel good. So that brings us to the job initiative, which is like this Bill Mitchell bill, which is going to basically this jobs program, which is going to get everyone jobs. And he's in this really nice little speech about how people are thrilled about being given chances and everything. We fire Bob.
Yep.
They have all the leverage in the room there, and I love that. He's just like getting so angry at him, but he has no recourse here. He's like, okay, fine. You want to fire me? Well, let's go. I'll walk right out there right now. The whole press corps is there.
I mean, who are you going to fire next, Rome? Sorry.
Yep. Okay, so we got to talk about the vice president. We got to talk about vice president.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, it's funny because it's like I saw Ben Kingsley's name in the credits and the whole movie. I was kind of like waiting around for him to pop up, and it's kind of funny, Drake, because I was kind of thinking like the vice president is going to be kind of like the thing that throws the kink in the armor. He's going to be like the plot complication, isn't he? But no, very much not the case. My God, you want to talk about like if Dave is like the aspirational, like dream president, I feel like this vice president is kind of like the more realistic goal to aspire to for a president. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Where we have this. Again, we have a guy who's homespun like Dave. Like if Dave actually took the steps to become president,
I very much get the feeling that this guy was literally inspired by like the Clinton and the Jimmy Carters of the world.
I believe so. I think it's anyway. So yeah, Ben Kingsley here, and here's what fascinating. Here's the other thing I was hinting at. I talked about Ellen. This is Nance was the other character in which we do something really impressive in record time. Like the challenge of this movie is, given what's going to happen to Dave and our story reaching its inevitable end here, you have to like the replacement that Dave that's going to take.
For sure.
In a very, very short amount of time, you have to trust this guy and like this guy, and leave a good taste in the audience's mouth. after we've introduced this character. So it's you get a sense that we're in good hands with this guy, and we do, and it's impressive. I think because of the credibility that Kingsley lends to this role, he seems like a man of honor, and also he wins Dave over, and I think what sells it completely. It's two moments. It's all in one scene, so I guess it's the same scene where basically later on after he says, Mr. President, I just wanted to say, after all the accusations been lobbed at him and everything, he says like, I really like your jobs program. And then he gets into the like, how did you get started? And he tells him he was a shoe salesman. I love that shoe salesman story about he took a lunch break and he signed up, and his wife, like, he had a budget of $2,000.
It's a lovely story. It
Yeah.
really is. Yeah,
and this inspires Dave to do what he does at the end of the movie. He's following Nance's story here. But yeah, all that's great. I love that. So that's Kingsley in such a short amount of screen time. He impresses.
He's really just got like 2 scenes basically.
Yeah, I mean, well, 3 if you count when he's being sworn in. But yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah,
essentially like 2. Let's say 2 full scenes, and then he's like in the back, literally over his shoulder in one scene, and then he's so,
right.
Let's see. So also, very fun cameo. The best cameo of the movie aside from Schwarzenegger. Just being fun with Schwarzenegger, but Oliver Stone, probably the best cameo in the movie.
Where does he pop up? Remind me.
Okay, so I believe, I forget.
Is he the conspiracy theory guy?
Yeah, he's the conspiracy theory.
Oh, okay, okay,
remember,
cool. Go ahead.
His conspiracy theorist because he made JFK, and this is him post JFK being asked about the president.
Of course, yeah.
It's pre-Nixon, but it's post.
Also in that scene is Larry King, and Larry King, Dragon. I'm kind of proud of this analogy. I think Larry King is like the Stan Lee of presidential movies.
Okay.
I don't know. I think that's a little accurate. I mean, he's always popping up if the movie's remotely political.
I mean, has he been like a number of president movies?
Oh yeah, he's all over the place, Dragon.
That's what I'm saying. I know he's been,
basically like if you need like an interview, like a political interview, Larry King's your guy.
Yep.
Anyways,
that tracks. All right, let's see. So, of course, Oliver Stone being the idea, he's like the one guy you can call out. Wait, if you look real closely, there are some differences here compared to the 2. Yeah. Let's see. So, okay, let's see. So, yeah, so it's a real strong choice we make in the movie that leads to the big speech. The fact that Bill Mitchell actually was corrupt. We actually made Bill Mitchell corrupt, so we put Dave in a very untenable position here where basically, realistically, we call out, we can't have him live out the fantasy of just like, he can't just keep pretending to be president. It's never going to last. So it feels very, this is going to be, a weird
tricky
comparison.
Tricky legacy.
It feels, from a storytelling perspective, it feels very much like a Pixar move in terms of, it's like the end of Ratatouille. It's like we couldn't just, we had to let the chef out of the
sure.
It's like the realistic call out of like, we can't just keep living on the fantasy forever, realistically in some cases, which, so because of that, it's like, it's like the status quo of the real world has to enter this movie, in which the real world, obviously, we have sucky presidents all the time. Even the good presidents have sucky turns. And we need to end on a note of optimism, though, and we have a great vice president as our plan B for this path to optimism. So we kind of find a happy medium in terms of like what we're saying about this movie overall, in terms of the idealistic president that we want. Which, yes, is a fantasy because it's a fake guy kind of like walking in there with any political experience. But you know what? Maybe there is a guy in there that we're not paying enough attention to that could do the job better. So we have the speech that Dave gives, and as I said, I love that, we kind of put him in that position of he has no way out, so he's in a losing position. But as he's going down, though, he's going to set things right. He's making it known that, okay, Nance is completely innocent. Bob Alexander, though, he and I, partners in crime, that guy. Let's go right. Bob's having like a little victory party. He's like, die, you pawn scum. And we take Bob out. We don't kill him, but he's most likely going to prison or a Club Med prison. And then I love how he boils down the job of the president to it's a temp job, which is really nice. Given
that is a very good way to put it.
Yep, it's a temp. Again, the way it's supposed to be done. It's 4 years. It's Eight if you're lucky, I guess.
Oh.
Anyway, so he fakes a stroke and his death, and then we have one of the other best scenes in the movie. We have the ambulance scene.
Mm.
So early during that sandwich scene, we had this really great setup where Ving Rhames' Dwayne is like asked by Dave, like, "Hey, so you guys bodyguards, you would take a bullet for the president, right?" Like, yes. So I guess that means you'd be taking a bullet for me, and he doesn't answer him. So then after this whole movie, after they go on this arc and he's grown to respect and love Dave, we get to this ambulance scene where it's the last time they're assumingly they were going to see each other, and Dave extends his hand, they shakes his hand, but then Dwayne tells him, "Dave, I would have taken a bullet for you." And you gotta admit that when we play the music in this moment, it's freaking beautiful. When we play that James Newton Howard
In the moment, sure, it's fine, I guess.
You could say,
like I said, Dragon, I just think it's kind of like a byproduct of 90s movies in general, like that whole like overly sentimental swelling of music.
Tiki, it could have been Simon Birch, okay? It could have been Simon Birch.
That's fair.
Okay, literally, like we kill a woman with a baseball, and then we play music. Okay? Anyway, right. But yes, he walks off in the distance, and the movie could have ended there, honestly, because it's a real powerful ending if he walks off there and we just kind of roll the credits there. But you know what? I like that we reward Dave for all the goodwill that he's put out into this movie. It's like we give Dave a happy ending. We go to 5 months later. Vice President's been sworn in, and Dave is running for city councilman thanks to Murray running as his campaign manager and everything. And Ellen shows up.
Yeah, it's a nice little reunion.
He got the girl, and Dwayne's wearing a little button, and he's helping with the campaign. Ain't that cute?
I like that Dwayne is just like standing over the credits. That's kind of a funny gag.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's all she wrote.
Yeah, I mean, talking through it, Dragon, I guess I have a little bit more of an appreciation. It's a really good movie. Like I said, I just kind of feel like there's no way I was going to be able to kind of like see it as like the unbelievable masterpiece that you see it as, but it's really solid for sure. And, it's definitely a feel good movie, and it's definitely in the troubled times that we are in our country, our country. It's kind of funny because literally 30 years ago, Kevin Kline was making the point of like, man, there's so much shit going wrong in our country. It's so bad. We really need to do something.
Yep.
Well, yeah, we're still pretty much in that position, except 10 times worse. So
sure it's every 5 minutes these days, but
exactly. So yeah, definitely appreciate this. Glad I finally got around to it.
Yep, and again, just of course, I forget if it was how recently it was. I mean, Ivan Reitman has passed away now, but again, that man left such a legacy. It's a shame that towards the end of his career, the movies got less good. To put it delicately, but you know what? I mean, Ivan Reitman is still like in that 90s, the 80s to 90s period. For 2 decades, he made some excellent, or at the very least, well-loved movies. And I think Dave just kind of captures the spirit of, again, it's an idealistic movie. It's what we want politics to be, and it's written with kind of in a very witty way that says, politics could be this way, but we'd have to take out all the greed and conniving that makes a politician to do it.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is a pipe dream, but it is. I mean, the movie is inspiring. I think I think it's inspiring in the right ways. Without being preachy. I don't know. It feels like we could do this. It just feels like we want a president that we can like at the end of the day. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll get there, and it'll stick. Maybe one day it'll stick. Maybe one day we'll get Ben Kingsley in office,
like Obama for the first couple of years.
That's what I'm saying. Before he killed people with robots, but anyway. I'm quoting Patton Oswalt on that.
I know.
Anyway,
I don't even blame Obama. I just think he got way too stressed out for the job. I think the country got to him towards the end. Anyways,
it's a big responsibility.
It is. We saw how quick his hair went gray.
Yep. Too bad. I think it happens to all the presidents, though.
Oh, I know.
Anyway, at least the ones with hair. Okay.
All right. Well, big thanks to Richard's Victims for joining us in the chat. Let's see. Dragon, you guys are doing Star Wars Visions tomorrow. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then we'll be back. Of course, Thursday we'll be doing a Batcave. Oh, never mind that. Friday, you guys are doing Phineas and Ferb. Lots of cool stuff coming up. Stay tuned. Tune in. Subscribe if you don't mind. That'd be great. I'm going to actually start asking people to subscribe now and see if it actually does anything. All right. See y'all later.
Tomorrow.